Undercurrent, sponsored by John Hughes in Victoria Park. Choose your station before you choose your program. Absolutely.
Hello and welcome back to Undercurrent. Well, next up we sent our brand new reporter on her very first full assignment to find out just what it's like to be a first home buyer. Lauren Bellini reports.
Challenges facing first-time homebuyers are not new, but there's never been a better time to do your research. In 2011, the average Australian was earning $72,000 per year. Even with government funding, such as the First Homeowners Grant introduced in 2000, entering the property market and buying a first home is becoming increasingly unaffordable.
Housing in Western Australia is currently less affordable than it has been in the past. In the period between about 2003 and 2007, house prices in Perth doubled. And that's obviously put a lot of strain, particularly on first home buyers and those people who aren't in the market. I think the two issues are deposits, trying to save enough for a deposit, which is difficult if you're paying rent at the same time, but also the mortgage repayments, the actual size of the loan people have to take out to get into the market is a real issue.
You would find that economically wages haven't increased as much as they probably needed to match the affordability and the repayments. And the other issue is that the banks have just tightened up on lending. They really don't want to get people into positions that they can't afford to get out of. You know, the young people have to prove that they can afford to make the repayments, and that is what's becoming the most difficult part of actually getting a loan to buy your first property. Keystart is a company owned by the department. It has $3.5 billion out on loan, so it's a significant size enterprise. They have a range of programs aimed at different types of home buyer. As I said, 90% of their loans are to first home buyers. We're looking for those people who the banks would be reticent to lend to.
Have you been granted the first home buyers grant?
Yes, I did.
And that's $7,000?
Yes, $7,000 and no stamp duty.
So do you think that's adequate enough? Is the government giving you enough? Could they do more?
Probably could do more. I mean, $7,000 only really covered all the fees and 1 month of interest.
What you actually find is that younger people probably don't have the, unless their parents are very savvy in that regard, they don't have the disciplines to actually learn how to put money aside. But generally they're either going to be working very hard or they're going to be going to mum and dad and saying, can I borrow 10 or 20 grand?
I think it's being realistic about your expectations and realistic about how much debt you can actually service.
The whole idea is that it's a financial instrument. So paying rent is obviously going to be less than your mortgage repayments, but in saying that, it's a waste of money. You could always rent out 1 or 2 of the bedrooms. That could help you pay your mortgage.
At the moment, the rental market is crazy, and to get something with enough room and in a good location, it costs almost more than your interest repayments. So to me, it was just, you know, that at that point to buy a house and then hopefully have it as something else that I can buy more and more houses.
So my recommendations would be begin with the end in mind, go and get your finance approvals, pre-approvals in place, go and sit down with some experts and find out that can you afford these repayments, set up a savings plan structure to make sure that you can actually come up with the deposit or go and beg mum and dad for some money, and then be in a position to go and make a strong offer on the property.
The real advice from our side is around Keystart. It's around understanding what your mortgage commitments are. It's understanding what the costs involved in a house are. Unless you've owned one, you don't actually realise, you know, you've got to pay rates and you've got to pay a whole range of things that you might not expect.
No doubt that that the affordable housing crisis in Perth is only at the beginning. It's going to get far worse.
It is clear it is extremely difficult to enter the property market, but with independent financial and property advice, first-time buyers can make a sound step on the property ladder. I'm Lauren Bellini reporting for Undercurrent.
Stuck for something to do? Well, the Fairbridge Festival 2012 is coming up. Here's a sneak peek at what you can expect.
Fairbridge for me is like a little bright spot in the year, a kind of an oasis of music-filled few days with nothing else to worry about. And, you know, even when that's just on the horizon, that's a wonderful thing to look forward to. But when you're there, it's just way better.
I keep coming back to Fairbridge because it's such a great experience. People are so relaxed there. Because it's a small area, it's got shade. It's just of a scale that works. It's of a human scale. You walk from venue to venue. People are excited about the latest act they saw that maybe they never heard of before, but who absolutely blew their minds. You share that information, you head off to see that group.
Fairbridge is really special because of the very clever way they have incorporated children, quite young children, in the audience and had acts for them.
One of the wonderful things now that I have a family is that you can take your kids there, you know that they're safe, there's loads of things for everybody. So you can go off, you can have your separate times, and then you can come back together.
There are so many young people, and these are young people who maybe in the past wouldn't have had a chance to see live music, only being able to get into pubs and nightclubs when they were of a certain age. So to see these young people coming back every year because it's a social event for them and being exposed to all that great music, that's very special.
Pulling their artists from half West Australia, half all over Australia, and whatever other international touring acts they could pick up. They've always had the bar pretty high.
You're seeing just the most brilliant acts up really close and personal. You're seeing headline, world headline acts alongside local acts. And there's no difference made between them. They're all performers and they're all on the same level.
Some festivals get a lot of big acts and attract people that way, but then they skimp on the sound production. They get whoever gives them the cheapest bid. The great thing about Fairbridge is they get the very best people to do the sound.
Here is a sound company that has specialised in live acoustic stuff, as opposed to some of the big contractors who do arenas, rock bands and that kind of stuff. The dance stage, that was a whole lot of fun.
So many things keep me coming back to Fairbridge.
There's always going to be something wonderful happen at Fairbridge every year.
Not to be missed.
Well, it wasn't just me that requested his return. Back by popular demand is Mr. John Hammond interviewing one of my most favourite people, Mr. Max Kay.
Max Kay, thank you for joining me at the Court Wine Bar this afternoon.
A pleasure. I'm not normally in Court Wine Bars or any wine bars, as a matter of fact, John.
Max, the tables are now turned, aren't they?
Yes, I only came because it was you.
Because it was only several years ago that you had a role on local radio.
That's right.
And you were interviewing people about local government.
Yes, I was.
Max, I still seem to think that you are in the local government.
People do phone me and say, can you get something done with my bin? They do phone me even now, and I tell them I've not been in local government since 2007.
But Max, the question is, do you miss it?
Probably for about 5 minutes I missed it. And I was very fortunate, I think, because I I maintained most of the committees that I was on, and the ones that I didn't, I've really got back again. Like I was on the Perth Theatre Trust, and I was off that committee for a few years, but I'm back on that committee again. I'm on the Swan Bells Foundation, which was still there, St Bartholomew's, Royal Perth Hospital Heritage Society. Perth has been a wonderful place for me, and it wasn't that I wasn't successful when I was home in Britain, but Perth has just been a marvellous. It's been a real eye-opener, and there's so many things happened to me here in Perth. First of all, I ran the Civic Theatre.
And what went on at the Civic Theatre for those who are listening?
Well, the Civic Theatre was a kind of review, a modern-day topical review with singing and dancing and comedy sketches.
Did you ever perform whilst you were at the Civic Theatre?
Only that was it. The 9:05 show really was me. We brought all the other people in, like the Ronnie Corbetts and the Phyllis Dillers and the Max Bygraves. We brought them in, but basically the show, and the most popular show by far, was 9:05, and I was the star of it.
And what happened at 9:05? What did you do?
I'm a character comedian. That's what I started. I started as a rock and roller, believe it or not, years and years ago, and I did very well in rock and roll, but I realised that wasn't, the longevity wasn't there, so I turned to comedy because I always had a kind of comedic flair.
Max, a few quick questions about the city of Perth that I'm going to ask a number of people, and that is, how do you feel about the Perth Convention Centre?
I think it's functional.
Do you think it's attractive?
No, as a design, it's hideous, absolutely hideous.
How do you feel about the Perth Bell Tower?
I love the Perth Tower. I'm on the foundation of the Perth Tower, so you're not going to get me saying it's not. I think it's a wonderful idea, and it was a pity that it became a political football and was allowed to be the size it is. It should have been twice the size.
What about the waterfront development at Barrack Street?
I'm not crazy about the waterfront development at Barrack Street. I think it's a pity that we have to destroy the Esplanade. I don't think it's the right way to go. And if you look at very successful waterfront developments, and one of them is of course South Bank in Melbourne, there is very, very little there. The government provided maybe a 2 or 3 story building at the front, which were things that the public could interact with food halls and lovely restaurants and gift shops and various other things. And all the other rest of the infrastructure was filled in by private enterprise. I don't know that a government really need to go to the trouble of building huge buildings and surround an area with huge office buildings.
And what do you say to people that criticise Perth for being a dull city?
Oh, rubbish, utter rubbish. I mean, wherever you go, I mean, if you go to Melbourne at night, Melbourne's not open at night. I mean, all these shops are closed and they don't stay open till all hours of the night.
And Max, with an accent like yours, do you support an AFL football team?
Don't tell me. I do, but don't tell me I've got an accent.
You do have an accent.
A Scottish
accent.
accent.
Before we leave, Max, what is that team?
I'm an Eagles man.
Oh, fantastic, Max. We can get on forever now. Max, thanks for
coming. Are you an Eagles fan?
Yes, I am.
Oh, I could kiss you now.
True blue. Thanks for coming to the Court Wine Bar this afternoon.
My pleasure. If I ever need help, will you defend me?
I certainly will, Max.
But I might have said some slanderous things here. I might need defence.
No, I'll make sure it's wiped.
Thank you.
Well, that brings us to the end of the very first episode of our brand new series of Undercurrent, and we certainly hope you enjoyed meeting our brand new reporter. I'm Christy Mullica, and I look forward to seeing you next week for more West Australian content here on Undercurrent.
Undercurrent, sponsored by John Hughes in Victoria Park. Choose your station before you choose your program. Absolutely.